So,
Secondly, it gives a message that next 20 years, these vehicles are going to pollute my cities. So where the, the decision could have been taken? I'm just asking that.
so first of all, I don't work with Tata Motors, so I cannot speak to the automotive thing. So let me talk. Yeah. So let me just talk from a principal point of view.
Absolutely.
So you clearly need to have tighter and tighter emission norms. No question of that. You ultimately need to get into an EV situation, but you need to have tighter and tighter norms. Question is that of the transition process, because you cannot just, these things are not turning a switch. You have to transition from one system to another. So any system that you need to transition, whether it is from petrol to CNG, from BS4 to BS5 to BS6 or whatever, has to have a transition process. So the question, I think in this case, the difference that the automotive manufacturers are having with the Supreme Court is that the whole transition process. They're saying that we have a problem with the way you're asking us to transition, because it's not as simple as that in terms of retooling our whole production base. So I think somewhere it is not just a judicial question, it's also a technical question. Yeah. And that's true for not just
I understand, but it's a tipping point. If we have to meet, the Paris summit norms and the kind of things those are happening, we have to take certain very harsh decisions. That's we can, make that awareness ki if we are going to take that decision in 2019, why not today?
Yeah, but
I was thinking, the makeover of the vehicles, whatever the retrofit they have to do into the fuel, this thing would have been.
No, I think the economics of the retrofit are very different.
Okay, absolutely.
And it's a question of who's going to bear the cost of the retrofit.
Yeah, thank you.
In fact, in this case, and I would want to step one step back and not get into this case as such. Just look at it from a perspective of 80% of the cases that have gone to court, and especially from an environmental perspective that have gone to court. If you dispassionately analyze it, there are basically two players. Okay? The two players that are coming is, one is public awareness and understanding, and therefore a pressure that a change is required. Number two, there's a vested interest, that is lobbying. These are the two primary players. Again, I'm sticking my neck out. In 80% of the cases, if you look at it, government has not been proactive in identifying what is the change steps, slept over it, allowed the stuff to go to court. You are never going to get a proper decision from court. It can only be the fourth or the fifth best. That's the issue.
Thank you.
You need a proactive government that looks at these things in the long term and says, this is the transition steps that we are going to take. Okay, one more round of questions.
Yes, just one very quick question on the sustainable mobility thing that I just wanted to address. So I think Raju made the point that the future is in EVs. I don't think there's any question of that. But I think the question that we still need to ask is the future of mobility in individually owned vehicles? And I think that's a serious question that we need to ask. And to me, the answer is it doesn't make sense to do that. And it makes sense for us to think of a public transport system that's efficient and effective. I use the metro and I think it's wonderful. I go to work in a metro. The other day I had gone to visit some of the sites of one of our power companies in North Delhi. I came back home in 45 minutes. Had I taken a car, it would have taken me 1.5 hours. So I think the question of public transport has to be part of the discourse. The narrative seems to be that, and this is back to my question of delinking affluence with consumption. Just because you're rich, why do you have to have your second car or your third car or your fourth car? I don't think that's, in fact you can't. Very soon, you're not going to be able to do that, and that's the truth. So it's not about whether you can afford it, it's just about whether that's the right thing to do.
Okay. Quick round, anybody else with burning questions? Yes, sir. Anybody else? Yeah, can we have the mic for this gentleman, please? Here.
Good afternoon. My name is Karthik and I come from a company called Tata Coffee. So right from the beginning of the day, we have been hearing about the urgency and the need to adopt the SDGs and come back to lower levels of consumption, as Mr. Venkateshwaran said about one planet. So my question is to Mr. Venkateshwaran and Mr. Varghese both, since you deal mostly in the policy area. Isn't it time to look at more punitive legislation or regulation to reduce consumption per se without affecting industry? I know this is a question which must have come up at other forums also.
You see, I think there are several drivers that change behavior. As far as business is concerned, there are principally three drivers that change behavior. There is regulation, there is investor pressure, and there is consumer pressure. Now, each of these three key drivers are influenced again by a whole bunch of other things that are around, but let's stay with these three drivers for the moment. Now, in India, the consumer driver is the weakest, because at the end of the day, it's back to the Maruti ad, kitna deta hai? You know, that's the bottom line. So it is basically left therefore to regulation and to investor pressure to sort of look at how this happens. Companies that are globalized, like ours, many of our companies are, when our markets are not just India, we then need to look at this slightly differently from companies that have only a market in India. Because if our market is only in India, then regulation is going to be the key driver. But if our market is global, then it's going to be a whole bunch of other things around us, including consumer pressure. That's going to define how we do it. So adoption of the SDGs will necessarily happen in different ways in this country. Certainly, I think, certainly there will be regulation. Certainly there will be a process of different kind of incentivization for certain things. Those would be the kind of instruments that would come about. But I don't think there is anyone I have met in corporate India who's ever going to question the validity of and the alignment to the SDGs. I think everybody thinks it's complicated. Everybody talks about 17 targets, 17 goals and 169 targets and says, what does this mean to us? But everybody is actually looking at it very seriously, because it just seems to provide a very useful framework to look at business in the long term, because that's the future of business. That's what is going to stare us in the face.
Okay. I don't think we have a chance, and it's getting to time. Any quick comments by anybody else from the panel? If that's the case, then I'm just going to wipe up. Give me 2 seconds and I'll just wind up. Okay, we've spent approximately an hour, and in fact over an hour, nearly an hour and a half. We've seen where we came from in terms of the SDGs, something that was put. And what you heard is from an EPC company, from a mobility company, from an environmental management company, and a person who looks after the sustainability issues in a conglomerate, how it can be Indianized. What do we see in this? Interesting. Shankar, I'm glad you brought out the old formula of I is equal to PAT. Some of us studied this and tried to apply this in the context of population, affluence, and technology. And I'm going to give you that frame in a slightly different kind of a fashion at this point of time. It's one of those old formula that really works. And I'm glad he brought it up again. The second was the reminder of planetary boundaries. The people-planet balance that needs to take place. I think that's the issue. There are different types of people, and there is a planetary boundary that needs to be balanced. Now, finding that at different stages of a growth path of society or the growth path of a company is important, and each one will have to figure that out. In that context, one of the major areas which I mentioned about upfront is public awareness. It's improved over the years, but at the scale at which it is required, it's not there yet. The second major area, the affluence, it's not just affluence, it is what are the lifestyle choices. Some of the examples, mobility, there is, with all due respects to transportation companies, there is no more chance of individual transportation. It has, and actually we can have it in the most viable fashion. Just take Delhi. Because of the size of Delhi, we can have the best world-class public transportation system in the cheapest cost. Why aren't we doing it? That's the way we need to look at this. Because there are so many people, we actually can have it at a low cost and have it world-class, nothing less than the best. And I think we need to start looking at these kind of things in this fashion. So the question of what he mentioned is affluence. The one example is lifestyle choices in each of these areas. Second area, also I can mention again in the urban context. Any of us who live in any of these semi-private housing colonies, first of all, you have an inverter in the house. Otherwise, if it's a housing colony, you have a standby system. Why can't we have the best energy system and 24/7? Why can't we have the, it's actually possible. And all these things, what they do is actually reduce waste. If it's done properly, scientifically, technically, it reduces waste. So the whole area of lifestyle choices, what is the lifestyle that we want? Number two, and lifestyle choices is what they call the consumption part of SCP. The production part, it's more in terms of the same T that Shankar was talking about, technology choices. What are the kind of efficiencies that are possible? How is it possible to de-link material resource consumption from the best products that are there in the market? How do you reduce? How do you recycle? So between lifestyle choices, technology choices, and ultimately, I told you, first is public awareness, knowing what it is, the lifestyle, technology choices. Ultimately, based on all these, where do you put down your money? The financial priorities, what are they? Thank you for being a good audience with us. Thank you to each one of our panelists, and including Raju, who left us. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed moderating it. Thank you. Sorry?
And thanks to the moderators. I think you were fantastic.
On behalf of the organizers and audience, I thank the panelists for an inspiring discussion on responsible consumption and production. Ladies and gentlemen, as we conclude this day, we thank our distinguished dignitaries and participants for your time and presence. We once again thank our sponsors, IL&FS and NBA. We finally request all the participants to also visit the exhibition, which is also going in the same floor. Thank you all.